Hi everyone, my name is Firdaus. Today I would like to talk about current state of Hungarian Budapest real estate market. It's been a while since the last time we have been talking about such a subject, but I think now it's time to refresh it. So I would like to tell you about overall current state of the market, what is with prices of properties here right now, and what we could expect from the market in the near future. I think let's go back in the time a little bit and start our, let's say, a small market analysis from the beginning of 2020. Because that was the time when pandemic arrived here and local real estate market faced some changes. Back then, during entire year, there was stagnation regarding real estate prices with minor changes in prices like from 1 to 5%, sometimes toward positive direction and sometimes toward negative. But overall, prices didn't change significantly. This is what we see also in a report of Hungarian National Bank from 2020 about real estate market. So here we can see two different indexes. To be more precise, quarterly price index between fourth quarter of 2019 and third quarter of 2020, and yearly price change index. So, for example, between first quarter of 2019 and first quarter of 2020, and so until third quarter of 2020. Besides that, here we can see price index overall countrywide and for Budapest. So in general, if we talk about price change countrywide in entire 2020, then we can see that in the first quarter of 2020 compared to the fourth quarter of 2019, there was price increase by 1.4%. In the second quarter, compared to the first quarter, price increase by 3.3%, and in the third quarter a little less, only by 1.1% compared to the second quarter of 2020. As for capital, for Budapest, we can see that in the first quarter of 2020 compared to the last quarter of 2019, there was price increase by 1.3%. In the second quarter, there was price drop by 3.5% compared to the first quarter, and in the third quarter, again price increase by 2% compared to the second quarter. If we speak about yearly price change, then we see that countrywide in the first quarter of 2020, prices raised for 12.6% compared to the first quarter of 2019, between second quarter of 2019 and second quarter of 2020 by 9.6%, and between third quarter of 2019 and third quarter of 2020, price increase by 7.9%. And if we speak about yearly price change, specifically in Budapest, then we can see that in the first quarter of 2020 there was price increase by 11% in terms of 1 year period. In the second quarter, the growth slowed down significantly and was only 0.4%. And in the third quarter of 2020, there was price drop by 0.6% than a year earlier at the same time. Prices continued to drop in the fourth quarter too, and countrywide there was price drop by 1.2% compared to the third quarter. In Budapest, it was 1.4% in the same period of time. In terms of 1 year period, there was a bit more price drop in the fourth quarter of 2020 from previous years 18.1% to 6.6% countrywide, and from 16.7% to negative 0.7% in Budapest, which is first time in a long period that following years prices were lower than the year earlier. As we can see, overall in 2020 during entire year prices either grew very little or sometimes they dropped by a very small amount in particular regions. Also, it is worth to mention that in 2020 prices of newly built properties increased more than prices of properties in secondary market, 12.6% versus 2.7% respectively. Such a condition of the local real estate market was made by uncertainty of both sellers and buyers because of suddenly appeared pandemic, as it happened basically everywhere in the world. Besides that, tourism in the country almost stopped to exist in that time, which very much affected decisions of those who wanted to buy property for investment only. Speaking about tourism, let's quickly look how much tourists were visiting the country in 2020. In this statistic, we can see amount of visitors in 2019 and in 2020. For example, in 2019, there were about 16.5 million visitors in the country, but in 2020, only about 8 million, which is less than a half of what was in 2019. Very important to mention that amount of foreign visitors was especially low, around 1.7 million compared to 7.7 million the year earlier. This is almost 4 times less than in 2019. So let's continue our discussion of real estate market. So sellers weren't sure what will happen in the near future and which direction will be moving in the market. And by such uncertainty, they didn't want to sell their properties in any cost. Also, many decided just to wait this uncertain period until at least something won't be clear in the market. Buyers, on the other hand, at least most of them, also decided to wait, hoping for price drop that they would buy the same property at more affordable price in a few months. In the end, this led to the fact that the market moved on, but without any significant changes in terms of prices themselves. There were some significant changes in terms of transactions. That is, in 2020 there were noticeably less transactions than in 2019, but again, it didn't really affect prices of properties themselves. But situation started to change noticeably from the beginning of 2021, and already in the first quarter there were price increase by about 9.5% countrywide compared to the fourth quarter of 2020, which also can be confirmed by the Central Statistic Authority in Hungary. In the second quarter, price increased by 3.5% compared to the first quarter, and in the third quarter by 3.2% compared to the second quarter. In terms of 1 year period, that is between third quarter of 2020 and third quarter of 2021, there was 15% of price growth. Amount of transactions also increased by 17% between first and third quarter of 2021, which is similar to 2019 indexes. The reason for these changes mostly was in in the fact that people more or less got used to the pandemic. During entire 2020 year, there wasn't happening any significant event in the real estate market, and people understood that they should move on without waiting any longer. Thus, who wanted to sell their property, they again started to sell, and who wanted to buy, they again started buying. Also, by that time, we are speaking about 2021, students started to return to universities, employees to offices, and from the spring, tourism also started to return, which was motivation for buyers who wanted to buy property for investment and who again could rent their property out without difficulties, including short-term rentals. Another reason is appearance of various programs of governmental support regarding loans and mortgages for local buyers, which motivated locals for immediate purchase of their own property instead of renting one. Recently came out report of Hungarian National Bank about fourth quarter of 2021 regarding prices of properties. And based on their report, there were price growth by 1.5% in the fourth quarter compared to the third quarter in Budapest. In terms of 1 year period, prices grew by 11.3%. Price growth in the regions was even more significant than in Budapest, 3.8% compared to the third quarter and 25% in terms of 1 year period. Countrywide, there was 2.4% quarterly and 21.4% yearly price growth. As we can see, overall 2021 was quite a good year in the real estate market. There were high amount of transactions, high demand for both secondary real estate and newly built properties, which led to price increase during entire year and in both secondary and newly built apartments markets. And now, let's look at the current state of the market in the end of June, beginning of July 2022, and what can we expect from the market this year. For example, can we count for price drop later on this year? Hungarian National Bank recently issued their preliminary report about first quarter of current year, and we can see that there is price increase by 17.8% in terms of 1 year period in Budapest and 25.3% countrywide. Except Hungarian National Bank, some other local real estate companies also made their preliminary report based on their own data about what we will speak later on. But in order to make any predictions for the future, there are several very important factors which must be taken into account, which tightly connected to real estate market, as well as to prices of real estate. And such factors, among some others, are following: current state of supply in the market right now, demand, including those buyers who want to buy property for investment only, financing programs, including current loan and mortgage offers and how affordable are they for buyers, current state of economy in the country, and what can we expect in this term in the future. Different governmental supporting programs for different group of buyers, for example, newly married couples, families with children, for those who want to do renovation of their home after buying, and so on. Construction market, which is first of all affects newly built property market, and overall condition of real estate market nowadays. If we speak, let's say, about if there will be price drop in the near future, it may first of all happen because of worsening economy in the country, if such a thing happens. For example, weakening economy in the near future, increasing inflation because of Ukrainian-Russian conflict, increasing loan rates, and so on. In addition to that, constantly growing prices of construction materials, which automatically leads to price growth for newly built properties, which in the last year already grew in prices significantly, approximately by 25%. And thus, even less people will be considering to purchase newly built apartments, which can lead to the fact that developers will build less apartments because of low demand. But there is one important factor to mention about, and it is that newly built property market owns nowadays only about 10% of the market share. That is, 9 out of 10 sold apartments are from secondary market. But based on analysis of some local companies, we should not expect significant changes from demand side this year. Meaning that if there is a demand, there won't be a price drop too. For example, based on Duna House's report, in the period of January and 15th of March of current year, there were 30,800 transactions countrywide, but last year in the same period it was 32,065 units, which means that this year there was 4% less transactions than the last year, which isn't really a big difference. Again, based on the report, in the same period amount of buyers who purchased property for investment only was increased significantly in 2022. Analysts asked to put attention to the, although small part of the market, but affecting the entire market, newly built property market, and that developing of new apartments won't become more affordable in the near future because of constantly growing prices of construction materials and growing prices for workers in this field. Thus, in the near future, there will be even more price growth in the market of newly built properties, and probably even less people will consider buying them, choosing secondary market instead, which can lead to price growth in this particular market. So let's make some conclusion. Taking into account the current situation with rising inflation, constantly growing prices of constructional materials, high demand for rental apartments, various programs of support for buyers, and so on, we can expect constant price growth this year too, even if it won't be as significant as last year. Again, because of the inflation, conflict in the neighboring country, which led to some kind of uncertainty among local people, more and more people see real estate investment as a more safe way to keep their money. That's it for today. We'll be keeping you updated about local real estate market. Thank you for watching this video. Please consider to subscribe to my channel, and we will see you in the next one. Cheers!